Hey, what's going on, everybody? Brent Hyden here, coming at you on this frigid Friday morning, talking tonight's 7-game slate around the association. Before we dig in, quick reminder, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. That way you will get notified every single time I post a new video. Also, if you like the content that I'm producing, please feel free to hit the thumbs up button right next to the subscribe button. That way it'll help me populate into search results and all that good stuff. Always helps build a community when more people stumble across this content. If you are somebody that has stumbled across this video and you're not already following me on Twitter, my Twitter handle at BrentHyden1 in the description down below. Make sure you hit that follow button, and while you're doing it, make sure you send me a direct message. Find out how you can get access to my projections, content, and daily breakdowns, all for a very affordable price that covers you all the way through the playoffs. If you're already a subscriber, make sure you're reading the pins in the Discord channel. That way you can find out how you can get a little bit of money back through the Refer a Friend promotion that I am running over there. So you may want to make sure that you take advantage of that. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dig into the first game of the night. We have Washington heading to Orlando. Washington 3-point favorites, 218.5 over under. Washington coming off the first game this season where they allowed less than 107 points in a game. Their defense has been terrible so far to start the season. 115.9 defensive rating, 123.9 points per game allowed. Orlando, unfortunately, has not been great on the offensive end. Only a 99 offensive rating, just not shooting the ball very well. That being said, in a matchup against a Washington defense that is absolutely terrible, there are still lots of places to look. That starts with DJ Augustin at the point guard position. Washington ranks 30th in defensive efficiency against point guards on the season. And without Jonathan Isaac on the floor, DJ Augustin, almost six fantasy points per 36-minute boost. He has been extremely consistent. There have been a couple games where he had down outings, obviously against Cleveland where he only shot twice. But 10 field goal attempts in 3 of the last 4. Has been shooting pretty well this season. Assist numbers are going to be there for him. Going to get a couple extra shots whenever without Isaac on the floor. This guy just consistently scores in the mid-20s with upside. I love him in the spot. This is a spot 4,500 on DraftKings. Going to be extremely overlooked. Everyone's going to be flocking to Terry Rozier, Marcus Smart, and a couple of these other guys that we're going to talk about a little bit later. And I understand it. No one's going to play DJ Augustin. And at 4,500, that is just an excellent, excellent spot for him over there. So I really, really, really like him over on FanDuel, or on DraftKings. Over on FanDuel, 4,800, still a very, very, very good price for him over there. So I am completely fine with him at that price tag. If we're looking at power forward, which is a pretty weak position on the slate, Aaron Gordon, 7,900. Very, very good price for him here. I absolutely love Aaron Gordon. Going to be popular, and I'm fine with that. He's not going to be as popular on DraftKings at 7,500, and I think that's going to be a big mistake. Aaron Gordon, a guy, obviously going to get a few extra shots, a few extra rebounds without Jonathan Isaac there. Washington ranks 29th in defensive efficiency against power forwards on the season, and even with Dwight Howard back, they're still struggling on the boards. 51.5 rebounds per game allowed to opponents. Aaron Gordon should have a monster game here. Double upside for sure. 7,500. I am absolutely loving Aaron Gordon at that price. The rest of this team, Evan Fournier is a pretty good tournament option. We've seen him have a couple of upside games recently, and that's led to his price being inflated. 6,400. I'm fine with that price. It's a little high, 6,900. Nice. Not somewhere I'm like forcing into my lineups, but if he fits what you're trying to do, it definitely makes sense. So I'm okay with a little bit of Evan Fournier there. Terrence Ross in cash games is fine, 4,700. 4,800. Gonna need an outlier game to do anything for him in tournaments, so more of a cash game option for me there. And then whenever we're looking at Vucevic, I love him in tournaments here. 8,100, just a little too cheap for the upside he has. 8,600, a little bit more fairly priced there. It is a great matchup against Dwight Howard, as I mentioned. Washington still really, really struggling on the boards. this season. Mo Bamba on FanDuel or DraftKings, an interesting tournament value option there. Flipping over to the Washington side of things, I do really like John Wall. 9,100, a little pricey over on DraftKings. 9,900, very pricey over on FanDuel. He's coming off a really solid game against the Dallas Mavericks, but Orlando 21st in defensive efficiency against point guards on the season. He has at least 7 assists in 7 of the 10 games this season, over 40 fantasy points in 6 of them. 25% of his shots come in the mid-range, where opponents are shooting 44% against, or no, 47% against Orlando this season. So it's a really good spot for him. I like him. 25% of his possessions come in isolation. Orlando 1.11 points per possession allowed in isolation this season. So good spot for Wall. Really good spot for Bradley Beal, who is still underpriced on DraftKings at 7,800. More appropriately priced at 8,500 on FanDuel. I do like getting exposure to one of these two guards. They're just going to play a ton of minutes because Washington is absolutely terrible on defense. Even whenever they're losing by like 20 points, you're still just going to get a ton of minutes and a ton of field goal attempts from these guys. So I love Bradley Beal in all formats. The guy that I'm targeting the most in this spot, obviously, is going to be Dwight Howard. Still too cheap, $6K on DraftKings. Has not had that monster game yet, but the opportunity has been there for him. The minutes have been solid, with exception to this one blowout against OKC, which was his first game of the season. I mean, we're looking at 30-plus minutes on a nightly basis, in a very good matchup against his former team, I might add, the Orlando Magic. They're giving up over 50 rebounds per game. They rank 21st in defensive efficiency to centers. Even at 6,900, nice. I love Dwight Howard. He's going to be a guy that I'm going to be getting a significant amount of exposure to on the slate. Otto Porter in tournaments, we saw the upside he has. He's still down the road as far as a guy that I'm really excited about, just because he's just so freaking inconsistent. And he could, if he's out there chucking and playing really poorly, he could lose some run to someone like Kelly Oubre. I love Markieff Morris in all formats. Has been spending some time on this second unit, spearheading the second unit a little bit more, which is a boost to his upside. And it is a very good spot for Markieff Morris, who continues to be a very high upside option at a very cheap price, $4,900 on FanDuel and $5,100 on DraftKings. Moving on, Charlotte heading to Philly to take on the Sixers. I feel like I should be more interested in this game than I actually am. There are a couple of interesting things to talk about. If you like Kemba Walker at 9,400 on DraftKings, feel free to roll him out. Dude's going to take a ton of shots. Usage rate over 30%. It's a good matchup for him. We saw him put up 60 fantasy points against the Sixers last time out. Took 31 freaking shots, 15 three-pointers. Really no reason to fear Kemba Walker in this spot. I know he had a couple of down games, obviously bounced back against Atlanta. It's still a good matchup for him. It is interesting because over here on FanDuel, he is 8,600. That is a very good price for Kemba Walker. He's going to be popular over on FanDuel for good reason. I love him in all formats. More of a tournament option, I think, for me because of where I'm going to be constructing my lineups in cash, at least on DraftKings. I could see him being a decent cash option here on FanDuel, but I still think, based on how I'm going to be constructing my lineups, I'm going to end up looking elsewhere in cash, but I understand making him a cash option if you so choose. Lamb and Batum are fine. They're good cash options. Again, not guys that I'm just super in love with. Lamb at 4,800 on FanDuel is a very good price. Batum at 6K. He's most nights going to give you in these upper 20s, lower 30s. I'm fine with that in cash games. He needs a monster, Batum like 10 and 10 game to really have upside in tournaments. So I don't love him in the spot in tournaments, but in cash, I'm completely fine with it. He's always going to project well. just because the minutes are secure for him. So that makes him more of a cash option for me. Same with Lamb. Like, just he needs a lot of production and like the like in the rebounds and steals and assists to really have a ton of value. If he's not getting those, it really hurts you and it really hurts his upside. So more of a cash option for me there. I'm a little concerned with the rest of this rotation. I think on FanDuel at like small forward, MKG is perfectly fine. Borrego has talked about trying to get all three centers into this game to deal with Embiid, and that's going to take a couple of minutes away from MKG. It's going to take a couple of minutes away from Marvin Williams because they're not gonna play small with one of those guys at the five, and that obviously hurts their upside, especially if you consider they're not going to be playing closer to the basket, which helps them get a few more rebounds. But on FanDuel, if you need to punt like 3,800, I'm perfectly fine with MKG at that price. 4,200, Marvin Williams coming off a very solid outing, I think is going to be popular. And again, I'm fine if you want to punt him over on FanDuel because you can drop his score if he sucks, which is probably going to happen more often than not. Zeller's fine in cash. I still think he's going to get right around 24, 25 minutes. 23, probably the low end of that, and get you right around like 21 fantasy points. It's nothing terribly exciting, but he's fine. Hernan Gomez and Biyombo are guys that if you're building a bunch of lineups, I would probably have a little bit of exposure to on DraftKings. Not somewhere I want to go on FanDuel because there's a lot of opportunity cost with center tonight. But if you're building 20 lineups or 50 lineups or 150 lineups on DraftKings, I would maybe take a couple shots on like a Hernan Gomez or Biyombo in the spot because both of them could just mash those salaries. I'm not targeting Malik Monk or anyone like that in this game. I think there's just better places to go with that salary. On the Philly side of things, Simmons in a fantastic spot. I absolutely love him in all formats. 9,800 on DraftKings. Obviously a guy with a lot of triple-double upside. Charlotte kind of struggling to defend the rim. 40% of opponents' shots are coming at the rim against them. Opponents are shooting right around 61% at the rim. We know Simmons is a guy that's going to take a lot of shots at the rim. 65% of his shots come at the rim. This last game actually took 20 shots, only shot 25%. I don't expect that to happen on a nightly basis. And, he's going to be able to get those rebounds and he's going to be able to get to the rim with ease. I think he's a fantastic tournament option. I'm probably looking elsewhere in cash, but if you wanted to roll him out in cash because he has that upside, that's completely fine. Joel Embiid 11-2. That's a tough price. There's a lot of really, really good center options for cheaper. So tournaments only for me on Embiid. The guy that I have the most interest here is Robert Covington, coming back off of a good outing against Indy, 28 fantasy points. The minutes are just going to be there for him, especially without Muscala. Muscala being out kind of helps shorten that rotation a little bit and gives Covington a minutes boost, which, especially in cash games, is what you're definitely looking for. You're looking for those minutes, but Robert Covington, a guy I think can pick apart this Charlotte defense. He did it last time these teams played. They ranked 27th in defensive efficiency against small forwards, so that's really good. They're allowing 22.7 points and 7 rebounds per game to the position. 42.7% from three against Charlotte this season. Covington, a guy, he's going to get you most nights. He's going to get you, 3, 4, 5, 6 3-point attempts. He's going to spot up a decent amount. 25% of his possessions are spot ups. They're allowing 1.11 points per possession to spot up shooters this season. Robert Covington, 5,400, going to be a core option for me tonight. Even at 6,600, I do like him a significant amount over on FanDuel. Dario Saric has burned people night in and night out, but at 5K on DraftKings and 5,200 on FanDuel, too cheap, has plenty of upside. Love him in tournaments. Moving on, Detroit at Atlanta. Detroit 5-point favorites in this one, 224.5 over under. Kevin Huerter is questionable. Justin Anderson continues to be out. John Collins continues to be out. I have a lot of interest in this game. There's some definitely some ways to attack. Starting on the Detroit side of things, I'm going to keep going back to Reggie Jackson and Ish Smith. Like I talked about it last time out, Ish Smith continues to shoot very poorly. Atlanta ranks 28th in defensive efficiency against point guards in the season. Opposing point guards are shooting 44.4% from three against them. Ish Smith, a guy shooting well below his career or season averages on the season, 33.3% from three. Last 10 games, 22.7% from three. Regression, not a word that I love to use a whole lot, but there's regression coming. He's going to outperform his $4,400 salary more often than not. So Ish Smith, a guy I absolutely love in the spot as a value point guard. And another guy like DJ Augustine that I think is a fantastic cash game pivot off of Terry Rozier, or a tournament pivot off of Terry Rozier. Over on FanDuel, 5,100. It's I think a little too high. Like for that same price, I would rather go Reggie Jackson. Jackson, a guy who I'm intrigued here because he has at least 5 3-point attempts in all 10 games this season. Again, I mentioned Atlanta allowing opponents to shoot opposing point guards to shoot almost 45% from 3-point range. Reggie Jackson in a great spot here. Reggie Jackson at 5,800 on DraftKings, very, very good option. I love him there too. Cash games, tournaments, feel free to roll him out. I think the other guys like the Reggie Bullocks and Stanley Johnsons and Glenn Robinsons, they're fine. They're not guys that I'm heavily targeting. But like even Langston Galloway, some of these value guys in this game they're gonna have good games. Like you're going to get a little bit of extra pace, a few extra shots against a terrible defense. Like I'm fine taking a shot on any of these guys if they fit. If you need to punt over on FanDuel, I'm less likely to do it on DraftKings where they are priced. But again, if you're building a bunch of tournament lineups, I would maybe sprinkle in a little bit. Like I would maybe set my exposure to like 10%, 5%. That way you'll get like one or two of each one in the spot. I do love Blake Griffin. 10K on DraftKings, a touch pricey. Over on FanDuel, 9,800. Dude has a really solid floor. Monster usage on the season. Absolutely no reason to not like Blake Griffin in this spot. I'm leaning towards Drummond, though. Drummond's the guy. Blake Griffin's going to project better, obviously, because he has, for the most part, been more consistent and had, just as much upside as Drummond on the season. Drummond comes in cheaper, which is why I'm leaning towards him on both sides, actually. Tend to a little more expensive than Griffin on FanDuel, but I do like him there. A little bit cheaper than Griffin on DraftKings. I have no issue pairing them together in tournaments. I would pick one or the other for cash games. The reason why, one of the other reasons outside of price that I really like Andre Drummond in the spot is I think he can fall into a few extra blocks here. Not a guy that obviously has a ton of block upside most nights. He's going to get you 1, 2, maybe 3 if you're lucky. But Atlanta has 7 players on their roster that take at least 40% of their shots at the rim. That's very intriguing. Obviously, with Andre Drummond being there, can get you a couple extra blocks if you have half the freaking lineup or half the players on this Atlanta roster taking 40% of their shots at the rim. So I like Andre Drummond a significant amount. And then Langston Galloway, a guy again I mentioned in tournaments, even like a Zaza, like you could fall into like a Zaza like 20 fantasy point game here. Worth considering. On the Atlanta side of things, Spellman, monster game last time out. I'm still fine with him. I mean, 4,100, very good price there. 4,200, very good price there. I don't expect 40 plus fantasy points out of him like he put up last time, but this is a spot where we've seen Detroit struggle a little bit against power forwards. They do struggle against the roll man in the pick and roll, which is a boost to Omari Spellman. They're allowing 0.97 points per possession to the 1.06 points per possession to the roll man, 0.97 points per possession on post ups. That accounts for almost 20% of Spellman's offensive production this season. He's fine in all formats. Detroit is really struggling at the rim as well, 70% allowed at the rim, and Spellman, a guy, 44% of his possessions come at the rim. So I'm fine with him in all formats. Again, I'm not expecting a monster outing from him like last time out, but if he gets you 22, 24 minutes, he's a guy that can produce in this spot. I like Alex Lynn, and Dwayne Dedman both. Lynn, more of the cash game option. Dedman in tournaments. Again, Detroit struggling sometime at the rim. 70% of opponents are shooting 70% at the rim. Alex Lynn, 67% of his shots come at the rim. Detroit has struggled against big men a little bit on the season, so Alex Lynn, a good value cash game center, and Dedman, a guy that I do like in tournaments. Trae Young, tournament option for me for sure. Always going to be a guy that has monster upside with a super unsafe floor. Detroit does struggle to defend the ball handler in the pick and roll. 30% of his, 30% of Young's possessions this season in the pick and roll. Bazemore, perfectly fine in all formats. Taurean Prince, DeAndre Bembry, two guys that you can look at in cash. Bembry on FanDuel, more of the play there. Prince on DraftKings at 5,600, more of the play there, but not spots where I'm just like forcing those guys in my lineup. Moving on, Indiana, Miami. This game, Miami 1.5 point favorites, 214.5 over under. Dwayne Wade is doubtful for this game. Derek Jones Jr. doubtful for this game. Goran Dragic questionable. We saw Wayne Ellington and Tyler Johnson fall into some extra minutes last game whenever Wade and Dragic were both out. If Dragic were to miss this game, both guys excellent options. Wayne Ellington in tournaments I think is fine, averaging about 0.73 fantasy points per minute without Wade and Jones on the floor, dating back to last season. He's going to shoot a decent amount. The minutes, I feel less confident in the minutes with Dragic being back. Obviously, that's just going to add 30-plus minutes to the rotation. He's not going to see 37 once again. He is still a guy that I have interest in tournaments. And if Dragic were out, I think you can roll him in cash. Really, the only other place that I'm looking, like Dragic is fine in cash if he plays. Winslow, Richardson, a guy I just feel really comfortable with in cash games just because the field goal attempts are going to be there most nights. Not the greatest of matchups, but he's a guy who's going to get you there more often than not, so that's fine. Over on FanDuel, Rodney McGruder, 4,900. We've seen him with monster upside here, like 4,900 on FanDuel. Very, very good price for tournaments. 6K, not so much. Whiteside, monster upside in the spot. Miles Turner on the floor. When Miles Turner is on the floor, Indiana, terrible rebounding. Terrible rebounding. Rebounding team whenever Miles Turner is on the floor. Whenever you take them off, they're one of the better rebounding teams in the NBA. Go figure. I'm fine with Whiteside in all formats, coming off of 29 points, 20 rebounds, 9 blocks. He's got to be popular, but at 8,200, price not up to where it really should be. 9,100 again, price not really up to where it should be. Fine with him in cash in tournaments. Whiteside, whenever Wade and Jones are off the floor, 25% usage rate, 1.38 fantasy points per minute. Those are really good numbers, so really good spot for Whiteside. If you want to roll him out, feel free. Looking at the Indiana side of things, Oladipo's always fine in tournaments, or in all formats, cash games, tournaments. Not a great matchup in this spot. Yeah, there's just not really a whole lot to like with the Indiana side of this game. Yeah, I think Sabonis is a great tournament option. He's slowly like usurping Miles Turner because Miles Turner is terrible, has been terrible. Sabonis I think is cash game safe if you're looking in this price range. 6,300 on DraftKings, 65 on FanDuel. That's fine. Not jumping up and down to get him at that price, but it's fine. Turner in tournaments, always someone that you can consider. I'd probably be looking elsewhere, though. Darren Collison is cheap. I'd rather go like the DJ Augustine, the Ish Smith, but we've seen Collison with monster upside at that price. Same with Corey Joseph. So if you're dying to get exposure to this game for some godforsaken reason, feel free to get some Collison. It's just this game's not terribly appealing. Brooklyn at Denver. Denver 9.5 point favorites in this one. 210.5 over under. You have really slow teams. I should not terribly slow, but like 100, right around 100, 100.3, 100.9 pace. Two defense is actually surprisingly decent. Um, Nets 113.1 defensive rating, Nuggets 100.9. I have more interest in the Nuggets side of this game. That starts with Nikola Jokic. He's had a couple of down outings. Um, Attempted just 18 shots over his last 4 games. One field goal attempt in his last game. One, and it was a last second heave from 3-point range. That's a little concerning. He goes through these stretches where he has these games where he just takes a couple of shots and he's happy with everyone else doing all the work. People are going to be off of him in the spot. They're going to come in and they're going to see 1 field goal attempt, 3 field goal attempts. And they're going to see these minutes, and people are going to get concerned. He had a little bit of foul trouble in these last 2 games. I love Jokic in all formats against the Nets team that is terrible against centers. They rank 22nd in defensive efficiency, allowing 22.8 points, 17.6 rebounds, and 3.6 assists per game to centers. Nikola Jokic, I am 100% going back to the well, especially in tournaments where you're going to get depressed ownership because people are going to play Drummond and a couple of these other guys, and they're going to overlook Jokic. So I love Jokic here. Murray always has tournament appeal. Never someone that I can really trust in cash. Like, the minutes are always going to be there for him. I have a hard time trusting him in cash, but in tournaments, I love him in this spot. If he comes out and has one of these games like he did against Boston where he took 30 shots, monster upside. I'm going to be looking elsewhere in cash though. Like at 7,200, I would rather get Donovan Mitchell. I would rather get De'Aaron Fox. I would rather get Derrick Rose. Like some of these other guys, I would rather take shots on in cash, but it perfectly fine tournament option there. Gary Harris at 5,900. Gonna be hard not to be a core option for me at that price tag. That's just super, super cheap for Gary Harris. You're gonna get like 36 minutes most likely. 5,900, super cheap. He is a little too pricey at 6,800, but I still understand the play there. Trey Lyles, we saw him get a little bit of extra run. Paul Millsap, a little bit bothered by an ankle injury. He's still too cheap, right around a fantasy point per minute, a little over a fantasy point per minute on the season, 5K on FanDuel, and really cheap at 4,700 on DraftKings. Pretty hard for him not to fall into like 25 plus fantasy points on a nightly basis. So I do like Trey Lyles pretty much in all formats. Millsap at 5,100, really, 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 really cheap. Really cheap. 5,600. I'm a little concerned about that ankle injury, but that's still a very good price for him. So if you're wanting to get some exposure there, feel free. On FanDuel, Juancho Hernan-Gomez, 3,900. I love the spot for him there. Most likely going to be a fade for me on DraftKings unless you're building a bunch of lineups. Again, Malone's riding the hot hand with Beasley and Torrey Craig and Hernan-Gomez. So it's a little terrifying whenever I'm trying to build a cash lineup, whenever Mike Malone has not committed to either of those guys playing a lot of minutes. Brooklyn side of this, I think Karis LeVert's really the only guy that I have interest in cash. Just continues to be extremely consistent, 26.5% usage rate on the season. Gonna be one of the only guys that's going to see 30 minutes on a nightly basis. 7K DraftKings, really, really good price there. 7,700 on FanDuel. Pretty fair price there. I love him in all formats. The rest of these guys are all tournaments for me. Jared Allen, insanely cheap, really risky against Jokic, but 5,300, way too cheap over there. Dinwiddie, I think, is actually cash viable just because the price. Like his minutes are going to be right around the mid 20s, and then if he's the hot hand at point guard, or if this game is close down the stretch, he's going to get the run over D'Angelo Russell, so I like Dinwiddie a significant amount. Goran Dragic ruled out, so that opens up Wayne Ellington and Tyler Johnson. So yeah, D'Angelo Russell in tournaments, 5,600, very, very fair price there. And I skipped over Mason Plumlee. I'm fine with him in all formats on DraftKings, 3,800, over a fantasy point per minute whenever he sees the minutes. If something were to happen with Jokic, if he got in foul trouble or whatever. Plumlee, a guy that could get a little extra run. So, yeah. Moving on. Boston, Utah. Utah, 3-point favorites, 210 over under. This game is pretty gross. I will say this. Kyrie Irving expected to sit this game out because of personal stuff, dealing with a funeral that he has to attend. And then Gordon Hayward has not been ruled out. Brad Stevens is hoping that he can play in this game. We're just going to have to monitor the news for that to see what happens. There's still a couple of places we can attack here. I prefer guys that get to the rim, point guards that get to the rim whenever I'm trying to attack Utah, because their rim protection numbers just not very good this season. Opponents are shooting 65% at the rim against them. That being said, they're still struggling a little bit in the mid-range. Opponents are shooting 44% against them in the mid-range. Rozier, a guy, just lives and dies in that mid-range. Like 45% of his shots come mid-range. He's going to be popular, going to be super chalky. Sites did adjust, 4,900 on DraftKings. He is like 6K over on FanDuel, 6,200. Yeah, y'all can have your chalk Terry Rozier at 6,200 on FanDuel. That's a hard pass for me. Over on DraftKings, 4,900. I'm still probably going to go with the Ish Smith and the DJ Augustine and these other mid-range guys that we've talked about. But I understand the play. It makes sense in cash because he's going to be popular. In tournaments, I think the move is to go with Marcus Smart, 4,100. Little too cheap for the upside that he has if he's going to be playing over 30 minutes, which he should, especially if Gordon Hayward is out. The rest of these guys, no one sees like a monster usage boost without Kyrie Irving. The ball just gets shared a little bit more, and you have like, dating back to last season, you have these guys picking up like an extra percent or an extra 0.5% across the board. Tatum picks up like an extra percent. Al Horford picks up a little bit. Everyone just picks up just a touch more usage, and it's nothing like super, super high. That being said, Jaylen Brown, tournament option, going to pick up right around an extra percentage point in usage at like 4,800? 4,600? That's just ridiculous. This guy has 30, 40 fantasy point upside, even though it is a tough matchup. I love some Jaylen Brown in tournaments. Really hard to get away from that price tag. I do like Gordon Hayward if he plays at 5K. 5,400. You do have the revenge narrative. Tournaments, sure. I have concerns about him, playing in his first back-to-back, returning to Utah. People are going to talk about the revenge narrative, even though he left. So, yeah, there's that. Tatum and Horford are fine in cash, just given their price tags and, again, the slight usage boost they're going to get. Centers have given Utah a little bit of issue so far this season, but it's been more of like the dominant, like, post big men, not really Al Horford's game, but I could see both of these guys having solid outings. Marcus Morris, 5,900. A little too high price, but obviously going to get a little bit of extra usage, a few extra shots, a few extra minutes if Hayward is out. 5,100, a very, very good price for him there. So I like Morris on FanDuel. Flipping over to the Utah side of things, I don't really have a lot of interest in Utah on FanDuel. Donovan Mitchell, high usage, ridiculously expensive at 8,800. That's a hard pass. Rudy Gobert, 8,700, could actually just feast on top of Al Horford. Like, the biggest concern I do have is Horford's going to try to pull him out of the paint a little bit, which is going to hurt his upside a touch. So more of a tournament option for me there. If we're looking over on DraftKings, 7,100 for Donovan Mitchell. Dude's going to take like 20 shots every single night. Monster usage. 7,100. That's just ridiculously cheap. You should be getting some exposure to Donovan Mitchell there. Jay Crowder. There's some revenge. There's some revenge for you. I'm going to pull it up right now. I think he had some solid games against Boston last year. Let's see. Jay Crowder against Boston. Three games against Boston last season: 24.3, 19.8, and 26.5. So no, not really monster, but I mean, At 5,300, I'll take the 24 and a half, the 26 fantasy point outings. Fit 5K. Yeah, sure. I'm fine with that. Moving on to a more appealing game, the last game of the night, Minnesota at the Kings. 3-point favorites for Minnesota. This is a 232 over-under. Yeah, lots of fantasy goodness in this game. Both these defenses absolutely terrible. Let's see. Minnesota allowing 118.2 points per game. Sacramento allowing 116.6 points per game. Sacramento 109 pace on the season. Looking at the Minnesota side of this, Jeff Teague is out. Bogdanovich is out. Jimmy Butler. He might play, he might not play. He might play the game with one hand in his pants like he did the other night. Who knows? But Sacramento, again, 116.6 points per game to opponents. They're ranked 25th in defensive efficiency to centers, 26th to power forwards, 26th in defensive efficiency to small forwards, 11th to shooting guards. Good job, Sacramento. You're defending shooting guards really well. And 23rd to point guards. Derrick Rose, coming off another big game, leads the team in usage at 26%, continues to shoot a shit ton, continues to look really good for Derrick Rose. So 6,800, very good price. 6K. FanDuel, I don't know how you're not just locking and loading Derrick Rose in all formats. I don't give a damn what his usage rate is going to be, or his ownership is going to be. No real reason to fade him. On DraftKings, where you can do like Rose, a pivot to Fox for 100 more, that makes a little more sense. But on FanDuel, 6K, yeah. Sacramento is allowing opponents to take 40% of their shots at the rim. They're allowing 66% shooting there. Rose is taking almost 40% of his shots at the rim this season. Rose is going to have another good game. I have a hard time not seeing him have a good game. Butler, fine in all formats if he plays. Okogie would be the play if he sits. Wiggins has a lot of GPP upside. Has looked fairly good for the majority of the season. 6,200, very fair price. I mean, most nights going to get you, over that 30 fantasy points. Field goal attempts are there. It's nice to see he's actually rebounding and getting some assists, so that's good. Finally, Andrew Wiggins starting to live up a little bit to the name. Perfectly fine with him. Taj Gibson, love him in all formats, just too cheap. 4,900, this dude is starting to play more minutes. I mean, if we're getting 32, 35, 36, 37 minutes of Taj Gibson against the Kings at 4,900, I don't know how you're not locking and loading that in. 5,300, cash games, tournaments. I don't know how you don't just play Taj Gibson in this spot. Karl Anthony Towns, oh boy. 8,900 on DraftKings. He is 96 on FanDuel. Yeah, tournaments only. I found this interesting. Justin Fan from Fantasy Labs tweeted this out yesterday. That Karl Anthony Towns just completely becomes a freaking ghost in the second half of games. He's shooting 48.7% from the floor, 59% from three in the first half of games. In the second half of games, 37.8 from the floor, 28.6 from three. I don't know what's happening in the locker room at halftime, but that's very concerning when this dude comes out and puts up I think he had 40 fantasy points. No, he had 28 fantasy points or something like that at the half against the Lakers, and then 30 ended up at 31. Yeah. Tough to really want to lock and load that, but it is a good spot for him. On the other side of this game, I love De'Aaron Fox in all formats, especially on DraftKings. FanDuel, it might be a little bit of a different story. Like a 7,500, that's still a very good price. You could definitely get away with using Fox and Rose in all formats on FanDuel. I love targeting him against teams that struggle to defend the pick and roll because 45% of his possessions are coming in the pick and roll. Wolves allowing almost 1 point per possession in the pick and roll. So that's really, really good. De'Aaron Fox, absolutely love him in this spot. With Bogdanovich out, that's going to secure the minutes for Bielitsa and Hield. Bielitsa, revenge game. a guy that's just been outside of the last couple of games, just really, really, really good. Got in some foul trouble. Milwaukee was a blowout, but like 30, 39, 39, 53, 43. Had that bad game against Denver, 32-6. Bad game against the Pelicans. That was a blowout. Denver was a blowout. Bielitsa 5,700, going to be a core option for me. 65, probably a core option for me on DraftKings or on FanDuel as well. Buddy Hield in tournaments for sure. Again, minutes are going to be there for him. I don't expect him to continue to shoot so freaking well, but lots of upside in the spot, so I still like Buddy Hield. And Willie Cauley-Stein, Minnesota ranks 27th in defensive efficiency against centers. They're allowing 24.3 points, 15.2%, or 15.2 rebounds per game. Sorry. 69% of Willie's shots are coming at the rim. Opponents are shooting 65% at the rim against the Wolves. Willie Cauley-Stein, 6,600. Love him. Willie Cauley-Stein, 7,300. Love him. Great spot for Willie Cauley-Stein. Outside of that, I don't really see a whole lot else I like. You could Shumpert for value in tournaments, but that would probably be it for me there. And that's the slate. That's it. That's all 7 games. Really fun slate, I think, in a couple spots. Really ugly in a couple others, but yeah, lots to talk about. Stack that Minnesota-Sacramento game. Didn't work last night with the Warriors and the Bucks, but I think the late night hammer on this one gonna be very good. So make sure you get some exposure to that. And good luck in all your contests tonight. I will be back tomorrow.